They're the largest joints in your body and sometimes the most painful. But as hunters, we really need them to work. Today, we're going to talk about preserving and strengthening your knees. Hey everyone, Samuel Allred here. Welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. Over the past year and a half, I've been having some trouble with my knees, and I want to talk about it because this is a common issue among hunters and outdoorsmen. We climb steep mountains, we carry heavy loads, and we push through discomfort as a matter of course. But sometimes it takes a toll. It's almost ironic because I generally think of hunting as something that helps me stay healthy. It motivates me to exercise and get outdoors, and if I'm successful, I'm rewarded with some of the most natural, free-range, antibiotic-free meat on the planet. What could be better, right? But it seems to me that there's no way around the fact that carrying heavy loads isn't great for your knees. And carrying heavy loads is typically an important part of the kind of hunting I like to do. Well, I don't intend to quit hunting, but I also want to be a good steward of my body, and I'd prefer to be mobile into my old age. So what am I supposed to do? In this episode, I'm going to share what I've learned about mitigating wear and tear on your knees. I'll talk about my experience with knee pain and recovery, my new protocol for protecting my knees, and then wrap up by sharing some specific exercises for knee strength and mobility. Hopefully, my experiences will help you avoid knee injury and stay strong and mobile for your next hunting season. Now, I'm going to make a disclaimer right up front. I'm not a doctor or a physical therapist. A lot of what you're going to hear in this episode is my anecdotal experience and maybe even some hypothesis. So keep that in mind. We're talking about a sample size of 1. That said, I think this is valuable information and probably something you want to start paying attention to if you are a hunter. All right, with that out in the open, let me explain what's been going on with my knees. It really all started a few years ago when my dad tore his meniscus. He's a pretty healthy guy, and he was playing sports and ended up really damaging his knee. And he had a long road to recovery. At first, it didn't seem completely torn, and so he recovered initially and then tore it all the way. He had to get surgery eventually. And this whole process made me feel extremely paranoid about my knees. I was hunting and spending more time rucking with a heavy backpack. And I was thinking, I want to make sure that my knees are healthy for my whole hunting career and also just for my normal life and longevity. So I started actively trying to prevent knee injury. And what this looked like for me was doing more rucking to stay strong, lifting, and especially doing squats so that I could build up the muscles around my knees and make sure that I didn't hurt them. Seems logical, right? So in the fall of 2024, I started rucking. And this wasn't just to prevent knee pain. It was also so that I could prepare for heavy packouts. I was thinking about elk hunting, and I was thinking if I kill an elk, I want to be capable of packing the whole elk out by myself, if that's what it comes down to. I want to be strong enough that it's just a matter of time. So if I kill it on a Wednesday, as long as the temperatures are cool enough, I could get the elk out of there by myself by Friday. It would just be a matter of how many trips it took. So that's why I started rucking. And then also I was thinking, the more that I ruck, just like working out, the more that I ruck, the stronger my legs are going to be, and therefore the less chance of injuring my knees. During this time, I was rucking with heavy loads. I figured just like lifting weights at the gym, if I can go up without pain, then I'm probably getting stronger and I'm going to be good to go. Now, I will explain why this is not accurate when it comes to knees in a minute. But safe to say, I soon started developing knee pain. By trying to avoid hurting my knees, I was actually creating a harmful environment for them. So I just had to pull back. I was, like I said, rucking heavy. I was rucking with loads up to 100 pounds because I was thinking I need to be strong. I need to be able to pack an elk out. If I can ruck more than what I'll have to carry in the field, I should do that. But that was starting to hurt my knees. So that was the first indication I was doing something wrong. I had to pull way back. Now, during those fall of 2024 seasons, the deer and elk seasons, I didn't have any pain just running around the mountains and looking for deer and elk, which was very interesting. I was really only having it under load. And when I pulled back and was just hiking around and moving a lot, I was fine. Now, I was largely unsuccessful during those seasons. I did help a friend pack out a deer, but I didn't get anything myself. And so I didn't really have to test my durability under load. Well, I had been taking it easy throughout the end of the deer season in 2024, and going into winter 2025, I began thinking about the spring bear season, the 2025 spring bear season. So I decided once again that I needed to do something to protect my knees because I was thinking about bear season. I was thinking about the steep country that I wanted to go into. And of course, recently I had been experiencing knee pain. So I started squatting. I was going to the gym and I was squatting and I was thinking this works my range of motion. It will help build up the muscles around my knees and this should protect my joints. Now, at the same time, I was thinking about sort of the cardio requirements of bear hunting in the mountains. And I realized that I needed to start doing some hikes and things to get ready for that. And so I kind of did too much too soon. I went out and did this steep, snowy mountain hike in February, like 3 months before bear season. And then I went to a local mountain and climbed that twice. It's like 1,800 feet of elevation gain. So I did that 2 weekends in a row. And it's not a bad hike. It's just really steep. I mean, very steep, and coming down, it's pretty brutal. Doesn't really switch back or anything. People around here hurt themselves on that mountain all the time. But I figured I'm young, I'm strong, and if I have the lung capacity to do it, surely my body can keep up. Well, that wasn't exactly correct. I got into it way too fast. I did too much too soon. So I'm doing these steep hikes, trying to condition myself, and then I'm squatting heavy, and it all added up to more knee pain. And once again, this is ridiculous. I'm trying to protect my knees and actively hurting them in the process. Well, come late February, I actually had an acute injury. So I was squatting at the gym and I was feeling something in my left knee in particular that kind of felt like a rubber band going over a rock. And in hindsight, I should have stopped right there. That's when I should have quit, been like, hey, my knees are hurting a little bit. I'm feeling this strange feeling in my left knee. I need to figure this out before I keep going. But being a little bit stubborn and just wanting to hit my goals, I decided to squat heavy anyway. And while I'm squatting, I'm kind of like messing around with my form so that I can find a position that feels a little bit better on my knees. And I did something really dumb. Instead of having my feet kind of pointed out a little bit, angled out, I put them straight ahead. So they're parallel to each other, straight ahead of me. And I tried to squat heavy with that, and I felt an acute pain in my knees. And even the day after that, it was worse. I realized I had sprained them. So that was a pretty terrible feeling, both in the pain that I was experiencing and also in the fact that I had basically done the opposite of what I had set out to do. In an effort to protect and not injure my knees, I had injured them, and just in time for spring bear season as well. So for about 2 weeks after that, I was in considerable pain, and all I did was walk. I didn't want to do nothing at all because I'm a little bit also, again, paranoid about recovering. And I know that active recovery is generally better than inactive recovery. And walking wasn't hurting me, so I figured that I could walk and be okay. And I think that was the right call, but I wasn't doing any lifting whatsoever. Over the next few months, I just kind of dealt with it. I wasn't squatting anymore. I went skiing once or twice, and that was pretty uncomfortable, but I didn't go skiing as much as I might have. I also wasn't doing any heavy rucking. And at this time, I'm trying to understand what's gone wrong and what I can do about it. So during this time, I tried some knees over toes exercises. There's a guy named Ben Patrick who talks about building bulletproof knees, and I was thinking that's what I need, of course. So I was trying these exercises. Really, they weren't helping because I had already experienced acute injury and they were just hurting me more. So I was just trying to pull back and walk as much as I could, but really I just needed to give my knees time to recover. Well, I hunted the spring bear season, 2025, and once again, while I was out hunting and moving around every day, I had little or no pain. I was just walking old logging roads, looking for bears, looking for sign, and when I was up and moving, I wasn't experiencing pain in my knees. Now, when I was at work during the week and I was sitting still, I would experience pain. Basically, I would start out the beginning of the day feeling okay, and then by the end of the day, I would just have this persistent burning sensation along my joint lines. And then especially in my left knee, I had still that rubber band over a rock feeling sometimes, and a little bit of a straining where my left inner quad muscle meets the knee area. And so I knew something was wrong. Obviously, I had this persistent pain that wouldn't go away, and I didn't know what to do about it. Now, you might be wondering why I haven't gone to a doctor at this point. And it's probably because I'm a man and I want to know that I'm not hallucinating something before I go to a doctor. Or I thought that I could figure it out by myself. I've been an athlete since I was a kid. I feel like I'm pretty good at researching, and I assumed that I would eventually come up with the answer. Also, I don't think I really wanted to hear the doctor or the physical therapist's answer. When I was getting ready for bear season, I had determined that I was going to hunt the bear season no matter what. And I guess I was afraid that if I went to a doctor, they were going to tell me not to do something like that, and I was going to do it anyway. And so I was thinking, what's the point? In retrospect, I should have gone way sooner. It would have helped me recover faster. It would have helped me understand my situation. And even if I decided to not follow their orders, at least I would have had some clarity on what was going on. So that was another failing on my part. At this point, you're probably questioning my judgment overall, but that's just the way that it happened. Going to the doctor did bring some relief. Basically, they took some x-rays of my knees, and they didn't give me an answer then and there, but they gave me some things to consider. So first, the doctor told me that my cartilage distance looks okay. And that's just the distance between the bones in the joint, indicating that there's still healthy cartilage there. He didn't think that I had done anything major like tearing a meniscus. And I didn't think so either through self-diagnosis, but I still had it in the back of my mind after my dad tore his meniscus that maybe I had done something that I would need surgery for. And he said, no, I don't think so. You could get an MRI and make sure, but essentially he didn't recommend one for me. And so that was a comfort in and of itself, knowing that it didn't look like I had done any long-term damage or anything that I would need surgery for. Now, he also told me that I have a condition called patella alta, and this is a congenital condition that just means your patellas ride higher than they're supposed to. And what happens when you have high kneecaps is that they sometimes don't track properly through the grooves in your knees, and they are more prone to dislocating. So that also helped me sort of contextualize what was going on. Maybe when I was squatting, maybe my left knee was actually starting to dislocate. And that was the rubber band over a rock feeling. The doctor told me that by his estimation, I hadn't done any major or long-term damage. However, when I was moving, something was wrong and irritating the soft tissues in my knee. And so that also confirmed, my suspicion that my knees were hurting, something that I knew, and that maybe something could be done about it to fix it. So going to the doctor did bring some clarity, although it didn't give me an answer right away. It seemed that my condition with my kneecaps being too high wasn't acute enough that I would need surgery or something to fix it. It's just going to be something that I have to manage. Now, as a side note, I looked up this condition, patella alta, which just means high patella, and the advice on the internet for patella alta is to not squat or use your full range of motion. And so I've been thinking about that, and I'm like, of course, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to be someone who, when I'm old, is having pain because I don't use my full range of motion. And if I'm hunting and hiking around, I need some range of motion. I need to be able to squat. So just not making the movements is not an option for me. I need to find a different way to manage this in the future. So after visiting the doctor, I went to a physical therapist. And the physical therapist was interesting because she gave me sort of an initial assessment and wasn't able to pinpoint anything, but she did say that probably my sitting position throughout the day at work was leading to shortened hip flexors. I had tight IT bands. And also during this time, I was just healing from an acute injury of actually spraining my knees. So this physical therapist walked me through some different types of exercises. Some of them felt very basic. Some of them were a little more enlightening. Initially, she assigned me about 3 hours of PT a day, which was insane. I obviously can't do that every single day. I started out doing as much as I could, but then had to cut it down to a manageable schedule. Now, after about 2 months of doing these exercises on my own, really not squatting, doing some hikes by myself, but really taking it easy generally, my knees started to feel better. And so part of it was definitely working with the physical therapist. Part of it was cutting back on my normal exercise. And then I think part of it was just the amount of time that had passed between my injury and the present. I hunted the 2025 deer and elk seasons. Those were my most successful deer and elk seasons ever. And just like in bear season, when I was just walking around with a light pack and not carrying anything heavy, I wasn't having any knee pain. And this was a big difference between me during the work week and me on the weekends hunting. As long as I was moving, I wasn't having any knee pain. But then I would sit and be immobile for long times during the work week, and I would get up and my knees would hurt. So in the 2025 elk season, I didn't have any major pack outs because Both of my kills were pretty easy extractions, which was really a blessing. And also due to the fact that I was hunting with some very generous folks who helped me extract these animals with a four-wheeler and also just packing out a short way to the road. So that was amazing, and I wasn't experiencing any knee pain. Today, about a year after my acute injury, I am probably 95% recovered. I don't notice knee pain throughout the day. Occasionally, after squatting or after hiking, I will feel some knee pain, but it's usually manageable, and I have a better idea of how to manage it in the future. Before we move on, I just want to recap the things that were likely hurting my knees. The first one was rucking heavy. I was carrying too much weight and I wasn't ready for it. And as I'll tell you about in a moment, it was probably too much weight, period, to ruck with. I was squatting heavy, and what made it worse was that I was probably squatting with bad form. I wasn't taking my time to build up a weight. I was just thinking, if I can move it, I can go higher. And that led to an acute injury. I was sitting a lot throughout the day, and more than just sitting, being immobile at my work. And then on top of all that, I wasn't really stretching that much. I kind of have a sarcastic view of stretching sometimes. I'm like, do horses stretch? But in reality, I needed to do some stretching, and it's more of a remedial thing because if I'm not moving throughout the day, I'm not getting any sort of range of motion. So all of this, in my experience, has led me to a new philosophy or a new protocol for protecting my knees. And I'm going to go through it step by step. Step number one is to move, and to move a lot. Being immobile throughout the day is quite literally likely to kill you, and it's also going to make your knees hurt. In my experience working at my desk job, if I take a walk or two throughout the day, my knees feel much better. And it's just because I'm using them. There are studies with joints that show that when you actually use the range of motion in the joint, it helps to lubricate the joint with synovial fluid. That's very important to the health of the joint. But if you don't use it, you're not going to get that lubrication, and your knees and all your joints really are going to start to deteriorate. So whatever you do, start walking, start being mobile. If you sit at work, think about getting a standing desk, and not just so that you can stand, but so you can switch positions throughout the day. So you don't have to spend the whole day standing. You don't have to spend the whole day sitting. This alone, moving throughout the day, has helped me mitigate my knee pain. The second step is strength and mobility training. Here's the thing that I've alluded to a couple times so far. Knee tendons and ligaments can adapt and strengthen, but it takes longer than it does for muscles to adapt and strengthen. So you should do things that work your mobility and your range of motion, but you need to work up to it, and you need to do it in very small increments over a long period of time. It's not going to be like weight training where you can weight train for 8 weeks and get a bunch of newbie gains and actually build some muscle and have some adaptations. These adaptations to your knee tendons and ligaments, to actually strengthen them and thicken them, are going to take a very long time. So you should for sure do strength and mobility training, but make sure you're easing into it and not overloading your joints right away. When I'm strength training, I am going to be doing things like squats and deadlifts, but generally I'm not doing anything real incredibly heavy. Like, I'm not trying to hit single lift PRs. I'm really trying to hit something like 8 reps or 12 reps, something a little bit higher where I'm getting the benefits of strength training without endangering my joints or my back and spine. Another thing to keep in mind while you're strength and mobility training is that when you are hunting, many of your movements require a single leg. So if you want to target hunting for your outcomes, you should consider doing some single leg exercises. And then, of course, don't forget to stretch. When your legs get all tight through your IT band and your calf and your quad, that tightness can affect the way that your knee moves and create pain. The third step of my new protocol is to work up to your hunt pack weight while rucking. And this is also very important. When I was rucking heavy. I was carrying 80 to 100 pounds because I figured I need to be able to carry more when I'm training than what I will be carrying in the field. And I figured if I carry more, I will be stronger. Now, this goes back to the idea that you can strengthen your knees, but with those tendons and ligaments, it's going to take a longer time than it takes for muscle to strengthen, which means that if you're newer to rucking, it's going to take a long time for those adaptations to happen in your knees. And you actually need to start at a much lower weight than you might expect. As I was researching and trying to figure out how to fix my exercise program so that my knees wouldn't hurt, I came across the Exo Mountain Gear rucking progression. All credit to them. They figured this out. And if you want to learn more about it, go to their website or listen to their backcountry hunting podcast. They're a great resource. They know way more than I do. But I came across this rucking progression and this plan that they had put together. And they started beginners at 10 or 20 pounds. And for their elite program, they're talking 40 pounds max. And so that was a huge revelation to me when I was thinking about it. I was like, okay, I've actually been rucking with weights that are detrimental to my knees. And if these guys who literally design backpacks for a living are only recommending 40 pounds for their most challenging rucking program, I really need to rethink this. And so I did a little more research. I started to understand how knees can actually adapt. And my whole philosophy on rucking has changed. Now, when I'm rucking, I'm training to carry my hunt pack weight. And when I'm hunting, I'm carrying anywhere between, 35 and 55 pounds of weight. And over the time period before my hunt, I want to work up to that hunt pack weight so I can be really effective and safe when I'm running around chasing animals in the mountains. Now, I am going to throw in a heavy ruck or two just to get the feel of it. And this is to build mental toughness and to understand what it feels like, but not enough of it that it's going to break down and deteriorate my knees. As a follow-up, step 4 is to just lighten your pack and use trekking poles. If you can carry less gear, that's going to be a better situation for your knees. And trekking poles can take a lot of stress off your knees, especially coming downhill. Trekking poles also just help you be stable in the mountains. You can use them as shooting sticks. I've started carrying trekking poles anytime I'm in like a steep situation or in a place where I think I'm going to have a heavy pack out. So lighten your pack in any way that you can and use trekking poles. Not because you're a sissy or something, but because you want the best longevity out of your knees and you want to be able to hunt for the longest time possible in the future. So even if it feels a little silly to you right now, just remember that you're making a decision to help yourself in the future. Now, you may be wondering, if you're not rucking heavy, how do you prepare for a heavy pack out? And my new philosophy is just to deal with it when you're successful. Of course, you will be getting stronger in the gym because you're doing your strength and mobility training. Of course, you will be more comfortable with a hunt pack, right? So maybe up to 40 pounds, which is a decent amount of weight, right? But when you are successful, you are going to carry a heavier load, likely, but it's going to be very infrequent and you will be very motivated. Think about almost any hunt. The amount of time you spend hunting and hiking around in the mountains is going to be much more than the amount of time that you spend packing out. And sometimes you're just not going to be successful, and you're not even going to have an opportunity to pack an animal out. So prepare in the ways you can without hurting yourself. But then when you have a heavy pack out to do, just deal with it. Now, there are some things you can do to help keep your joints safe, even when you are doing a heavy pack out. The first one is take more trips with fewer pounds. If you can only carry 60 pounds or 50 pounds, and you've been training up to 40 pounds while rucking, well, you can probably do that 60 pounds way longer without injuring yourself than you could do double that. Then you could do 120 pounds. So if you have the opportunity, why not make more trips with fewer pounds? Another helpful thing is to have some friends who you can call or contact when you make a kill, and you can spread out the load amongst everybody. And then finally, don't bite off more than you can chew. Think about it critically before you go out and hunt. For example, if you're elk hunting by yourself, think about how far away from the road you can be before you are exceeding your capability to either get back without injuring yourself or without the meat spoiling. So always consider that and hunt within your own limitations. All right, I'm going to throw in some bonus tips for my protocol. These are things that may vary more from person to person, but they're things to consider and things to try. So my first bonus tip is to reduce processed sugars in your diet. I've heard from friends and family that when they eat sugar, their joints feel way worse after a hike. Now, I haven't experienced this acutely, but it does make sense that if you have a lot of processed sugar in your body, it could be creating inflammation in your joints and contributing to pain. So you may want to try that. Try not eating sugar for a couple days before your next hike and see how your joints feel afterwards. My second bonus tip is to incorporate some moderate running. For some reason, this has been helping my knees, and I can't quite explain it, but I'm doing just a little bit of running before I work out just as a warm-up. It's something like 6 to 10 minutes at a 9 or 10 minute mile pace. So not really fast, not a lot of it, not so much that it could actually be breaking me down or affecting my immune system. But for whatever reason, when I do this warm up and just a little bit of running, it seems that my knees feel better. My guess is that it's strengthening my legs and core, especially my calves. I run with a 4-foot strike, and so I'm not just slamming my heel into the ground every time, which can also contribute to more force up through the knee joint. So maybe just a little bit of running could be helpful for you. I don't advocate lots of long distance running. I think it can often do more harm than good if you're not careful about it, but some moderate running may be helpful to get some range of motion in your knees, strengthen your legs, and reduce knee pain. And then my third tip is to consider your footwear. I suspect that heavy, stiff boots can't help your knees. And I think that some of the ways that we've incorporated arch support and ankle support actually mess with our natural body mechanics, and this could definitely contribute to knee pain. So you do want to consider your whole lower leg, including your foot. I include this as a bonus tip though, because some people may just feel better with a shoe that has great arch support. Some people may feel better in a very flat shoe. There's a lot of human variability there. So I don't want you to change something that's been working for you. But if you are trying to figure out why your knees are hurting, it's a possibility that your footwear is playing into that. And so it's something to consider. So that's my protocol or my new philosophy. So far, it's been working a lot better than my previous attempts to protect my knees, and I will keep you updated on the podcast moving forward. Let's bring it all home by talking about some exercises and movements for knee strength and mobility. So when we are exercising to protect our knees, we've got a couple different goals. One, we want to maintain mobility and range of motion in our hips all the way down to our feet. We also want to increase stability around the knee joint. So that means strengthening your quad and your hamstrings and your calves, even your tibialis in the front of your leg. You also want to be able to strengthen your tendons slowly, right? So over time, using that range of motion under some load to slowly create adaptations. And then one thing that's hunting specific is going downhill. And going downhill is always brutal for me because I've got a backpack on and I'm in steep North Idaho country going over deadfall and things like that. And a lot of the times when you are working out, you're thinking about going uphill and increasing your aerobic capacity and climbing to the next glassing vantage and things like that. But you really need to pay attention to going downhill. And once again, going downhill uses muscles that stabilize your knees and slow you down. So here are some exercises that I find particularly useful for preventing knee pain. The first one is the leg extension. This is where you sit on a chair or sit on a workout bench or something, and you simply contract your quad, bring your leg up so your leg is pointing straight in front of you, your toes are pointed to the ceiling, and you straighten out your leg, and then you hold it for maybe about 3 seconds, and then you slowly let it down. And then you can do sets of this where you do 10 reps and then maybe 3 sets of 10 reps. And if you want to make it harder, you can use an ankle weight or you can use a leg extension machine at the gym. And anecdotally, from everybody I know who has knee pain, these are the best exercises to help reduce pain. They work your quad, they help the tracking of your patella, and for whatever reason, these ones seem to be the number one thing that helps people, in my life at least, manage their knee pain. So somewhat anecdotal, but I think they're safe. There's a progression you can do from no weight at all to an actual weighted leg extension, and it may be a good way to start strengthening the stabilizing muscles around your knee. Now, the next exercise is the wall sit. My physical therapist told me that wall sits are better than squats for knee pain and stability. And she was just saying that it's a hold. You aren't going through the full range of motion, which can irritate your knees if they're already in pain. And it really works those stabilization muscles for a long time. Whereas when you're squatting, you're just going through the up and down motion. So I don't think you should never squat at all, but if you're specifically trying to strengthen your knees, a good wall sit is a great way to start building those stabilization muscles. When it comes to stabilizing your knee, also your hips and pelvis and glutes are all involved. And actually your gluteus medius and your hip flexors and all of that helps to prevent valgus force in your knees, which means your knees buckling inward. And this can happen when you're stepping with a heavy pack. It can happen when you're squatting and your knees buckle inward. So it's important to also work on those muscles that come up to your hips and pelvis. And some exercises that I've found helpful are side lying hip abductions, which are where you lay on your side and then lift your straight leg up into the air and then bring it down slowly and do that maybe for 10 or 15 reps. Then flip over and do it on the other side. You can also do a side lying abduction where you raise your leg and then make forward circles for 10 reps and then backwards circles with your toe while lying on your side. Those are great ways to work that gluteus medius and some of those other outer hip muscles. And then similar to side lying hip abductions are clamshells, where you lay on your side almost in the fetal position, but instead of all curled up, you kind of have a straight spine in alignment. And then you are going to lift your bent knee into the air while keeping your heels just about touching. And it kind of looks like a clamshell. And that's another good one, working those same muscles in a different way. If you're starting to build some strength in your legs, in your hips, there are a few advanced exercises that are really targeted towards hunting that you can try. Many people have the problem of wanting to hunt in steep areas like North Idaho, for example, but not having steep hills to train on where they're at. Or maybe it's cold outside and you don't want to go walk down a steep mountain. What you can do in the gym is actually walk on a treadmill backwards. And what you do is crank up the incline on the treadmill and then walk backwards. And this, to a degree, imitates walking downhill. It's not exactly the same, but it's going to work some of the same muscles. And you should try this. It actually is pretty challenging. I would start easily and work your way into it. And then if you can do it backwards at an incline with no pain, you could also consider doing it weighted with some dumbbells, like just a backwards farmer carry. And you will feel it in your knees and around your knees very quickly. Once again, ease into this and don't do it with ridiculous amounts of weight. But that's one way to prepare for walking downhill, even at the gym. Another great exercise is the Patrick step. I think this is named after Ben Patrick, the knees over toes guy. There may be another term for it, but it's basically where you stand up on a box and then you take one leg off of the box and you dip down towards the ground. You're not going to completely touch the ground. You are instead going to straighten your other leg and come back up onto the box. And so one leg in that motion is bending. It's kind of like you're stepping downstairs, but you're doing a very controlled movement throughout. And so this is just like walking downhill. Once again, you're using those same muscles that need to get stronger to help you not hurt yourself as you're going downhill. And then the third, more advanced exercise is a bent knee calf raise. Calf raises are a great thing to do in general and not too advanced. The bent knee calf raise can put a little bit more pressure on your knee. So if you're in pain, I wouldn't start with this. However, it mimics a feeling that I feel all the time when I'm climbing in steep country, and strengthening your calf can help to stabilize your knee and also stabilize down in your ankle area, which is then going to affect the rest of your knee as well. So a bent knee calf raise, you're just going to stand facing a wall about an arm's width away from the wall. You're going to bend your knees and usually use the wall to stabilize yourself. And then you're going to do calf raises with your knees bent. If you've never done these before, they can be very challenging, but it's, like I said, one of those feelings that I feel all the time when I am hiking around in the mountains. My final piece of advice when it comes to exercise is to stretch. You need to be stretching your quad, in your hamstrings, in your calves, in your glutes. These are pretty simple stretches to do. And I know that horses don't stretch, but as humans, we need to do things remedially because of our modern sedentary lives. Some other stretches that I find particularly helpful are the standing hip flexor stretch. You go into a lunge position, but instead of lunging all the way down, you hold the position stretched out and you lean back a little bit and you will feel a stretch right through your hip flexor. This is very helpful to combat the effects of sitting all day and that shortened hip flexor, which then can pull on your patellas and stress your knee joints. There's also the pigeon pose stretch. And truthfully, I can't do a full pigeon pose stretch. I'm not flexible enough, but I've started working on it. And this especially seems to help stretch near my hip joint and then also sort of my IT band. Work into that one. It's a little bit tricky, but I think it's worth it. And then anything you can do to stretch your IT band. One of the most common IT band stretches is like a hamstring stretch where you try to touch your toes, but instead of going straight down with both hands and feet parallel, you cross one foot over the other and try to touch your toes. And you should feel a stretch through the outside of your leg and through that IT band. All right, guys. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope this has been helpful for you. Whether my specific protocol and exercises help you out, or whether this just sparks some more self-research and discovery. Either way, I think it's good to talk about. And I think knee pain is one of those things that many, many people experience, but there's not enough information on how to actually address it. And so I thought I would just offer up everything that I have learned so far. Now, I'll close out with a final thought, and that is that if you want to protect your knees, you need to start now. Like we talked about, it takes a long time for knees to adapt and to strengthen. And even if you are trying to prepare for a spring bear hunt, for example, that's 4 months out, and you really need that amount of time to start making even muscular adaptations. If you've got hunts planned this year, start thinking about how to protect your knees and ease into it. Don't do anything that's going to damage your knees like I did. Instead, start making small, smart choices that will pay off in longevity and pain-free hunting. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Instagram. It's just Persistence Outdoors. I'll be happy to find an answer. Of course, please take a moment to follow the podcast on whatever platform you listen on. I wish you all wonderful knee health, and I will catch you on the next one.